I'm Luke Batt, and you're about to watch the Kiwi F.O.R.T podcast at Digital Nationz. I have with me today the concept artist, designer, and he's a writer at Weta Workshop, Mr. Greg Broadmore. Thanks for talking with us today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Sweet. How are you liking Digital Nationz so far?
I've only just arrived, a little hungover, and so walking in a little shaded to bright flashing lights is quite an experience. But it's rad. I'm a huge video game fan, and so I have actually barely even checked it out yet. So I'm quite excited to actually go around and see stuff.
Have you been able to play on an Xbox One or PlayStation 4 at other events you've been to?
I was at Comic-Con in San Diego earlier this year and had a look at them there where they were running. The booths were side by side there. So that's the first time I got to see them. But they only had a couple of games playing at that time, I think a few games. So really interesting to see what they've got now.
Definitely jump down the floor. There's some really great titles on both sides that are well worth
good to see consoles finally caught up with PC graphics.
It's great, isn't it? I love it. Okay, so for anyone who doesn't know who you are and what Weta Workshops is and all that sort of carry on, can you explain who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, so I work at Weta Workshop. I've been there for about 10 or 11 years now, I think. And I started as a concept designer. And I think the first thing I worked on was Evangelion, which never went anywhere. And then, sadly. And then I worked on Narnia and King Kong. King Kong was great fun for me because I'm a huge dinosaur fan and nut. So that was kind of like a dream project. And then we started working actually on Halo, which was being a video game fan and someone who played a lot of Halo, I was kind of like one of the lead people on that because I was helping to educate some of the more senior people at the workshop, like Richard and so on, who what the hell Halo actually was. And as you know, it's pretty famous now, that film fell over. And that was Neil Blomkamp's first film, and Peter was sort of shepherding him through that. And but out of the ashes of that came District 9, and so I leapt into that. And that was probably the most significant film project I've been involved in, or significant for me. I mean, it was a relatively small budget compared to some of the other things I worked on, but it was really, really satisfying and interesting film.
What sort of things do you do on these films?
So in that film, I was a lead concept designer, and it was really just conceptually designing. For me, I focused on the technology, so the robots, the spaceships, the weapons, all that kind of good nerdy stuff, because I'm very much into science fiction weaponry.
So you pretty much designed the majority of the weapons and vehicles in District 9?
Yeah. There was a lot of us designing a lot of stuff, but as often happens with films, not much of that early conceptual stuff necessarily makes it into the film. Sure. You'd be astonished how much goes on. It never makes it anywhere. I think if there's an art book out for District 9, and I think if you look at that, you realise that most of that you see in the art book is not recognisable in the film. And I think Elysium's the same. Elysium art book just came out. I have nothing to do with that film, but that just scratches the surface of the thousands of drawings that were created.
So you mentioned that you had a fair hand in Halo.
Yeah.
This is a gaming event. Like, what sort of things are you able to say? What sort of things you were working on with that?
No, well, all the stuff you know.
Okay.
Like it was very much a movie of the game. It was based around the Master Chief, and so we were going through and designing all the major creatures. When I say designing, it's a really interesting challenge because that property already exists, and so the world is already designed for it. So it's really what we're trying to do in Weta there was add a level of reality to it.
Take it from game to movie or game to TV.
And Neil's goal was to make it more gritty and more militaristic, and so that was an interesting one because that was my intention as well, was to make it more grounded.
Did you have any hand in the short film that he did for the Halo?
I think we helped out with making some props. That was those people think that it has some connection to the movie, and it does in the sense that Neil worked on it, but almost nothing else did. Like we were doing our own warthog, which was really like the warthog from the game, but gone in a much more militaristic, instantly recognisable, but a different thing. And that only got so far down the path. It was still conceptual, but they were building the chassis, and that they basically re-engineered and put the exact chassis or the exact bodywork from the actual game straight on it. So everything that you saw in those trailers was literally just models from the game. So it was nothing from the film. Yeah.
So have you been able to have a bit of a drive in the Warthog?
Yeah, I've been driven around in it. We had it at our Christmas party once. It was rad. it was at a local school just up the road from workshop, and they had actually kids were getting rides in the Warthog. The Warthog can crab, it can turn its both wheels, like the sets of wheels, the same way, so it can kind of drive sort of sideways, and it had the big mini cannon on the top that actually spins and.
Was someone able to actually operate or like stand with the minigun as it was driving? Like, did they
I
have
don't know
harnesses?
I think people did, but I think it's a bit dodgy. I know that
Yeah.
when Neil was working on that, he just about busted his ear completely off because he was sitting in the back filming, and I think he hit his head on it as it, like, you know, because it's a bouncy off-road vehicle. It's a bit of a dodgy thing to be driving in. So it's brilliant. It'll climb up anything. It was actually made by one of our lead engineers who writes makes those sort of vehicles for a living, so it could go anywhere.
Brilliant. Now, you're famous for another thing that you've brought out of Weta, the ray guns.
Yes.
Yes. What can you tell us about those?
So yeah, that's something I've loved working at Weta Workshop. I love working on exciting things like District 9, but I always have a burning passion to do my own stuff. I always have. I spent most of my years before Weta Workshop making my own music, making my own comic books, and that kind of stuff. So working on other people's projects is fun, but ultimately, unless it's the perfect project for me, I'm not super excited about it. So Dr. Broadmore's was something, and the ray guns was something I created in my spare time, and showed Richard Taylor, who runs Weta Workshop, what I was doing, and the idea formed. It was like, well, how about we make these as collectibles? It's just a fun idea. It's kind of a ridiculous idea because they're very expensive to make, very hard to reproduce. No one knew about them, so we just built them on a whim, took them to Comic-Con, and there was a real connection. Yeah. And from that, I decided, I need to make a book that sort of embeds these in a world, and I've made 3 books now. The latest one being Triumph, and so layer by layer, we've sort of added more and more to the world. And now, luckily for me, I'm getting to develop a new part of that property, of that world, into an area of entertainment related to where we are now. But I can't talk much about it.
Ooh, that is interesting.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. Now, not necessarily what we're doing here, but there were rumours about a Dr. Broadmore movie. Is that still in the works?
We've talked about it off and on a lot. We've been at various studios talking about the idea, and it's been all over the place. It still comes up, but really, my passion actually is actually in games, and actually at the other extreme in comic books, and so I love film, and I'm known for working in film, but my interest is more in that way. And now that I'm getting to explore this other part of the Dr. Broadmore's world in sort of digital form, it's scratched for me. So I'm not saying they're not going to be a film, but it's not something I'm personally driving at right now. But there's been so much interest in it that it'll happen at some point. I'm just not sure when.
I'm not expecting any sort of like confirmation here, but with Xbox One's move into the TV realm, it'd be awesome to have like a Dr. Broadmore TV show that you can get through your Xbox One that ties in with the Dr. Broadmore game.
There might be something happening on the TV front. Maybe. These things are notoriously complicated and notoriously fickle.
And anything can change.
Oh man, like I travel around the world a lot, and so you meet a lot of interesting people, and the ideas pop up for these sort of things all the time. But man, getting them off the ground, you would not believe.
Lots of work.
It's a lot of work, and it's fickle.
Yes.
And it's so it means that's what I do is end up focusing on the things I know I can make and make happen.
So you said that you've worked on comics as well. Can you tell us about some of the comic work that you've worked on?
Yeah, so I've done the 3 Dr. Broadmore's books. Before that, actually, I released my own comic book through Package, which is a really small gig guide in Wellington, but they had connections with Martin Emmond and Simon Morse and others, and I did my first comic book with them, and I've always had that passion. I think I'll do, at some point in the future, that's something I'd like to go back to, sort of like comic books, because it's really empowering and satisfying to do that stuff, because you can do it, like to create a movie or a game or something. It's a massive effort. Yeah, it's a long turnaround time. It's usually a colossal effort to make anything of any sort of grandeur. But you can imagine big with a comic book and achieve a lot with just yourself,
yes,
which I really love. That's a very empowering sort of experience making a comic book.
And there was
And-
an anthology series, a New
Yeah.
Zealand one that came out.
So a guy I've been chatting to online, Damon King, he came up with the idea of faction comics, which is going well. I did the cover for the first one, and my friend Christian Pierce did the cover for the new one, which is just out, which is rad. And so and I think there's actually a lot of projects like that in the off that are around. And I think faction is just really amazingly well professionally done one. You know?
I picked up the first copy. It was really good.
It reminds me, it's the same level of professionalism towards comic art that my friend Paul Tobin has about White Cloud Worlds, which is sort of his book showcase exhibition of New Zealand.
Such an amazing book.
Yeah,
So many
good on him. And there's so many of us, fantasy and science fiction artists, not just at workshop, around New Zealand, and it's actually difficult to get your artwork out there. So things like faction and White Cloud Worlds are amazing vessels.
Some of the artwork in that, like for the Maori culture artwork, it just shows a side to Maori culture I find that you don't normally see. I would love to see some like a movie or some art or a comic
you look at like
that uses that. So.
Gus Hunter's artwork. Gus Hunter is a prolific artist, and he's worked on so many films. I wouldn't even be able to list them all at Weta. But I think the work you're talking about is his, and you can see that when people might imagine like a movie of Maori mythology, they don't really get it. And then you look at Gus's artwork and you go,
like,
okay, that's what it would be like.
That is it.
Yeah,
I want
blow
that.
your freaking mind.
Exactly. So we're coming to near the end. Can you tell us about anything that you're working on at the moment?
No.
No. Fair enough.
I'm working on something very exciting, and I think in another few months, 6 months, maybe I'll be able to share something from it.
Awesome. So where can people find your work if they want to get some of it themselves?
If they want to check out the world of Dr. Groardbort, that is drgroardbort.com. drgroardborts.com. Man, you're going to have to flash that up on the screen. Please write that down, because
it's a confusing name to say.
It is. I apologise for that.
How did you come up with that name?
I was probably drunk. I don't know.
Brilliant. Okay, so drgroardborts.com.
That's right.
And they can find all the Weta ray guns there, all the Dr. Groardbort stuff there. Can they find?
And if you want to see
comic work?
stupid drawings and things I do in my spare time, I have a blog spot, gregbroadmore.blogspot.com.
There we go.
And you can see pictures of women without their clothes on and robots getting their heads blown off. And
awesome stuff, man. Any final words? Anything that you want to comment on or make mention of?
No, I want to go try the Oculus.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just down through there and keep going around. Find it, no problem. That was Greg Broadmore. I'm Luke Batt. Catch you guys next time.
I'm Luke Batt from the Kiwi F.O.R.T podcast, and that was us at Digital Nationz. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.
Yeah!